So are they to be blamed? The 1% and the Indians are to be blamed for
No,
where
No. The truth is, the system is responsible here. The system has perpetuated. The truth is, they inherited a certain thing and they never wanted to change it. Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Let's talk about
that.
Mr. James,
well, here's this example, right? Right now, if you take the average Tobagonian young person who wants to go to any professional school, that's really their dream. If their family were to try to finance that, most families cannot finance that because the way most people finance is they put land up as equity to finance a loan. A Tobagonian can't really do that. Most people in Laventille can't do that because they don't own their land, right? And land is wealth, and it's generational wealth, not simply by saying land has value, but it's how you can leverage land ownership for the advancement of your family, for the education. So yes, you will see the whole Indian family at the airport crying to send them away because they all came together and likely leveraged some land to help finance that dream.
Yes.
For us, most of us, even if we wanted to, we can't do it because we don't own land. At most, we might be leasing some land, but we don't own land. And the truth is, I think that's one of the failures, that we inherited a post-colonial country but didn't actually go in and rewrite some of the colonial inequities that were built into the system. If you go and you look at countries like Rwanda, what they did to ensure that 40% of their legislature was going to be female. You look at what they've been doing in Ethiopia to ensure, again, equity. They identify what are their inequities and then say, this is how we're going to address that. You know, Coco keeps asking, what is going on with Tobago's House of Assembly, which is only Black people serving, right? Even when they can bring in their counselors, they haven't brought in a non-Black counselor. Again, that's where intentionality comes in, which is if you really want to reflect and do representation right, sometimes you need intentionality, right? If you're going to keep saying, this is what I'm going to do for you, vote for me, then have you come back to those communities and give them the thing they really want, which is they don't just want a permanent job that's low paid, low wage. They don't really want poor housing that turns into projects later on, that turns into another ghetto. Yeah.
I want to become a doctor. My son want to become a doctor. My son want to become an agriculturist. My son want to become a nurse. You have to go in and make sure why the people vote for you, they are being satisfied. Like today, I received information of a young woman from Delaford who was promised a roof. Yeah? So I have to go now and ask, what happened there? Who took back the material? What happened? This can't be a political gimmick. We have to make sure that we keep a balance from the top down. I am not here speaking about racism. I want to know that we can change it, that things could happen differently for our people, so that our young people wouldn't feel so disenfranchised to know that all the boys in Caroni and all the boys there in the Indian areas can do things. Why I am not, so they start to hate the Indians. The Indians did not take anything away from us. Can we give our closing statement? That's our other question. Avanel, you want to say something?
Yes, I just want to briefly touch on it. And I think something that within our Black community, we have to kind of realize that we do unconsciously. We have that built-in fear that we know what we have, we know what we could afford, but we're not willing to go the extra step, the extra mile. And I think that is what keeps us back a lot of times, even with our own children. We have children that have the potential, that we could nourish that potential. They go into the same school, they go in and get in the same education. But after high school, we have nothing else to give them. We have nothing else. They wouldn't do that. It seemed, and I think Mr. Henry brought up a great and a major point. The familial structure has definitely changed. It's after a certain age, it becomes every man for themselves. It's no longer me, you, and the extended family that we once had. And then we have that built-in systemic fear that we probably generationally brought down, where we don't think we could actually do better.
Yeah, like Avanel, people who have a child, a black person have a child that live in a village. They go and they tell everybody, no one don't even say, well, they go in the pocket and say, girl, look at $5 US, hold that in your purse. Look at $10. They don't. The first thing that you might hear them say, she not make nothing, you know, she not make nothing, you know. But we don't get together. So some of the biases that we face we create it amongst ourselves. You understand me? Like how some people saw Mr. James coming at the house in Tobago. He is the main inspector. But when he come on my show, people saying he had the inspector. That's the same guy. We don't pay attention to our people and their professions and where they reach in life. And that's a mistake that we are making, and we have racism amongst our own race.
But comment here is really telling if this is true, where Avanell Hazel is saying presently the persons at Crown Point, which is Tobago, where the airport expansion is happening, are being given lease-owned lands for freehold. Because if that is indeed true, that is quite shocking. Is that true, Mr. James?
Well, I've heard so, but I'll come back in because I think Dr. Henry wants to, for the longest while, he wanted to say something.
Well, no, you should say.
No, go ahead, Mr. James.
Yeah, well, that touches on a significant point, and so piggybacking on what Dr. Duke was saying, that's a major part of the inequity, the discrimination that we have not, that we didn't discuss tonight. And I'm saying that racism is not just between people who look different physically. So it's not a case of African and Indian. It's really about groups. And in Tobago, we talk about owning the lands. Tobagonians can't make any law to legalize the land in Tobago. And we have suffered a lot for that. In fact, the program I used to host on Channel 555, Dr. Williams used to make the point that Tobagonians are land rich and cash poor. We said, no, he has to go further. He said, land poor and cash poor. Because for years we have had this problem in Tobago because of what we inherited. The lands are tied up in the ancestors' name and so on. So there is no kind of real subdivision and titles. There's no, the land title in Tobago is a real problem. So that this assembly, this 20-year assembly, they have been asking the government in Trinidad to deal with that situation. Up to now, they can't deal with it. So that we begin by activating inequity. There's a constitutional inequity. Because here it is, after 400 years, Tobago cannot make laws to legalize Tobago or to do anything for Tobago. So I don't celebrate emancipation. I don't celebrate that. Because if pre-emancipation I could make law for myself, then post-emancipation, it means I can make law for myself. Because the main characteristic of slavery is that you couldn't do, you were enslaved, you can't make laws for yourself, people make laws for you, and they enslave you. And in closing,
Mr. James, you always as lead and you.
No, that's well, we could deepen that. But I want you to understand in terms of because racism is really about discrimination.
However, Tobago House of Assembly keep acquiring a lot of lands, but still making us believe is Trinidad controlling the land. That's a new show.
That's a different thing. I was talking about what Dr. Duke was saying.
I know what you're saying, but what I am saying is that we are running out of time.
No.
Need to answer questions according.
No, I was answering the question. I think sometimes you misunderstand me. Dr. Duke was saying that the people in Tobago don't own the lands.
We know that, don't you? If Dr. Duke went there, our show is coming to an end, and we have a question that we still have to ask you.
Yes. Okay, but all he was doing was just agreeing with me, Coco.
Why are you doing that to me? I don't know what you were saying. I am saying he's starting up a new program there because I have that program already ready for him. Not now.
Okay. All right. So here's the last question, which is Anthony and Avanel. There are regular complaints of racial inequity within the workplace and for employment opportunities in Trinidad and Tobago. What is the state of racial equity when it comes to equal opportunity? And we were limited on characters here, but really equal opportunity as it pertains to the workplace. So now, not entrepreneurship, but workplace inequity and what can be done to address workplace inequity. And we're going to really try to hone it in on race. We know there's socioeconomics, we know there's party politics, but we also know that there are a lot of racial dynamics. For example, as Mr. James just referred to, with the nexus for why UTT was formed, which is the inequities at UE and getting in. We've heard similar things when it comes to actually getting into leadership roles across the government, leadership roles across the THA even, leadership roles within the educational leadership system. What's the state and how does one get toward equal opportunity? Because this is really speaking to the fact that there are people who actually have the qualifications, but they're still being treated inequitably. So what's the...
Mr. You first answer the question because you were going there already. So that's what I'm telling you. There is a question for you and Avanel. This is you and Avanel question. The next two on the panel, you guys will give us your closing statements. But now, Mr. James, this is your question. Go for
the racial inequity within the workplace. Is that more? That's for Trinidad. That's in Trinidad or central in Tobago. I operate in Tobago, so I'm not really aware of any sort of racial inequity in the workplace in Tobago.
Dr. Duke, let James know if there is any definite way of answering this question, because we cannot change.
There's no definite way. If you prefer focusing on Tobago, then if it's not racial inequity, what inequity do you see in the workplace in Tobago, if any? And then we'll go to Avanel.
I can't really speak to any kind of inequity or discrimination, if there is any at all.
Assembly into never hire an East Indian or a Syrian or anyone in the Tobago House.
What does that mean, really?
Why
hire in the House Assembly? What do you mean?
When I say hire, not in the Assembly to walk outside, I mean in the Tobago House of Assembly.
Hire? Like a counselor?
You understand?
Okay, so I think what Coco is saying is if you look across leadership in the Tobago House of Assembly, the administrative leadership, not just the elected leadership, how representative is that of Tobago's actual diversity? Now, I know Tobago is still largely people of African descent, but Tobago has a significant non-African descended population.
I understand that the principal now in Bishop's High School is an Indian.
Yes, she's been there for a long time. She's lovely. But I think, okay, let's move on, because I don't think Mr. James feels comfortable with that question. Avanel.
Yes. So as far as inequity goes in the workplace, and I can attest for the United States here, there has been racial inequities as far as how one progresses up the ladder. And by up the ladder, I mean, being able to start from, coming into a system where you're starting at the bottom and trying to get to a position where you can become a manager or just someone with a director or CEO in a higher position. There is so much inequality here in the United States when it comes to racism. And a lot of the things that I've experienced and found within myself, the issues come from within our own race. You have predominantly African American people who are already in higher position, and you'll go to a job interview and they would be the ones that discriminate against you. Sometimes it's your own kind that discriminates against you because they have their own personal biases. And in their mind, they want to know, well, you come from, and a lot of the time, sometimes too, it's also within when they hear you from somewhere else. They want to know, oh, what kind of education you come from? You come from educational, you come from that third world country that used to, they love to label us third world country. And to be honest, back in those days, our educational system was so much better. There is inequality in not just race, but also within the sexes, where women don't get the same amount of pay that you find a man would have. And I don't know what the issue is, because even within our theater, you can clearly see it when it comes to those inequality. Why are we not inclusive? There's not as many women as there are male counterparts. Likewise, there's not as much diversity within the cabinets of each political party once they've been placed into power.
That's right. There we go.
Once they've been voted. Mind you, they come around election time and they'll be diverse within the races. They'll put someone else there. Once it comes to picking their cabinet members or their persons in to put in the structural portion of that cabinet, you find that diversity is gone.
Let us speak about the Tobago House of Assembly, where unto this day I'm trying to get my boy Anthony to really speak of even choosing someone to run for an area. We never see they choose an Indian. I am very disgusted that everybody not staying within the line of the question and the answers to give. We are seeing it blatantly being affecting Tobago. Tobago House of Assembly, not even the senators that they're choosing, they choose an Indian. Keith Rowley choose what's the young girl from Betty Zob name? I'm talking today because why are we so evasive that we can't speak the truth of what is happening?
Mama Coco.
Speak, Brother Earl.
No, most of us, the majority of us in the panel do not live in Tobago. I don't live in Tobago, so I cannot speak to what's happening in there. What I can tell you though, what I can tell you is what I have heard. I have heard in Trinidad and Tobago, what still exists is if you find a CEO of Indian descent, that CEO would make it a habit of employing people that look like him. I'm sure there might be some of that on the other way around, but things like that is problematic, right? So I cannot speak to what's happening in Tobago. I always refer to Mr. James because I think he's in Tobago. He can speak directly to that, but I cannot, and I don't think Avanel can as well, because she personally she spoke about the United States and racism. But the question is really, we can only speak experience and where we are, frame of reference.
Speaking, this question was directed to Anthony James and Avanel, because you might think Avanel living in America, but Avanel know more Tobago history and Tobago stories more than all those who live in there and enjoying the freedom of living in Tobago and enjoying everything that Tobago have to offer. But what I'm saying here now, I don't have to wait until Mr. James answer. I don't have to wait on Avanel.
Yeah.
I am the moderator of this show. I am the one who interviews you guys. Cindy doesn't get guests for me. I get my own guests. God tell me who to call on. And when I call on you and I give you a question,
right,
just don't evade the question. And if you're evading the question, say, I am not at liberty to speak.
Right.
So right now, all questions are over. Avanel, can you read some of the statements from or comments from people?
But the first one I want to bring up, Don Lopes made a statement that people would not vote for them. that is in regards to if we choose to put an Indian person there. Now, I want to kind of comment on this because I don't necessarily see why we can't vote for them, because when we're going out to vote, we shouldn't be vote based on what, and this is where that discrimination comes up. We shouldn't be voting based on how someone looks or what descent they are from. We should be voting based on what is right and necessary for our community.
And what they can do.
What they can bring to the table.
Right.
So staying that focus and saying, all right, I ain't going to vote because that person is Indian. That is a racist thought. That is a very racist thought, and we have to get out of that narrative, because at the end of the day, it is what is best for Tobago and what is best for our community.
Because that's it.
Indian or black.
That's how we going to teach the younger generation.
Yes. You have to call it what it is.
The truth is what Avanel is saying is actually the irony of the smaller island's truth, right? So for example, the smaller island doesn't see a problem with never having had a non-black representative sitting in the THA legislature, because as far as they're concerned, it's impossible for them to be guilty of having any sort of isms, because they're the historically disenfranchised group. And of course, that's what happens sometimes, right? Because there's a huge argument out there that if you are the victim of racism, you yourself can never be the perpetuator of a bias. But the truth is we can have biases. And we do have biases on the island. We do have biases in many ways wherein we don't realize what's absent, even though we can look at Trinidad and immediately tell what's going on in Trinidad and have solutions for Trinidad. Go ahead, Mr. Earl.
One thing that has been of interest to me is the fact that, look at Jamaica. Jamaica, their motto is out of many, one people. In Jamaica, there are Chinese Jamaicans.
Yeah.
There are Indians Jamaicans. But you know what? They don't call themselves Chinese. When you ask them who are you, they say, I'm a Jamaican.
I'm a Jamaican.
They're Indian, I'm a Jamaican. That's before they say I'm an Indian. They'll tell you they're Jamaican. And as the point that Cindy made earlier, which is important and which I found out, is that in Jamaica, in the books in the school, starting from elementary school, highlights that Jamaican, whether you're of Indian descent, you're Jamaican.
Yes.
Will you see? But in Trinidad, we still have the I'm Indian. The Indian thinks of himself as an Indian before a Trinbagonian. And that and the Chinese think of himself as a Chinese before a Trinbagonian. Right?
No.
So I think that is problematic. We have to educate people.
And I went to school with Indians in Roxborough, all them powder, all them marriage. I went to school with all of them people, and I never hear they defining. They don't have to say they are Indians. You say that they are Indians.
Exactly.
In Trinidad, it's different, Mama Coco. In Trinidad, it's different.
To school in Trinidad too. My principal was Mr. Shaw. He never said my Indian principal. He's my principal.
He wouldn't say it, but that's the way they behave.
No, not everybody. No, we're not going there tonight. Not everybody does that.
No, I'm not saying everybody.
My brother gave one Indian girl 10 children.
Yes.
No, I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying the general.
Okay. So I think what he's saying,
everybody.
Coco, right? What we have to recognize is, because we asked tonight for solutions. The problem is that in parts of Trinidad and Tobago, we have bad actors. But what we don't have are laws to identify the bad actors and nip it in the bud. So like when Earl says that there could be principals who are selecting based on race, we have CEOs selecting based on race, we have,
It happens when
right.
When sister come, I didn't want to go there, but we ending the show. When she won, the whole Trinidad and Tobago embassy changed.
Right. So the question is, how do you stop that from happening? And what is in the law? Is there anything in the law?
What can we do?
Is there anything in the law right now that people can use to redress those issues when they see them?
What can the president do?
Well, that's a good question, right? So, for example, you would think if a president is sent appointments, because again, I don't think it's the prime minister that actually appoints the consul officers and stuff, the formal appointments, right? Mr. James, they're going to be nominated by the Prime Minister and stuff, but who actually signs off on their appointment?
The appointments of the ambassadors. That's the Prime Minister.
Okay. So if it's the Prime Minister, then the question is who holds him or her responsible? Who holds them responsible? Because I think we see it. We certainly saw the change in the consulates in the U.S. I can't speak for every other country in the world. We saw in the U.S. And then we certainly saw after the 2015 election the flip, and we literally saw the commentary of people because they recognized that change. But here's the thing, right?
Remember the consulate in the United States. They are civil servants or contract workers from Trinidad. They're coming straight from Trinidad. Some of them living here, but you have to get your what do you call it? You have to get your work permit to change.
The consulate
take over. When the PNM took over, the whole of the embassy was jet black like you and me.
Yes.
The consulates are political appointees all over the world.
Political appointees.
No. That's my question, right? I know they're appointed by the Prime Minister. I asked who signs off on the appointment in the end.
I don't know, the government, whoever.
Just as how, okay,
the Prime Minister,
so and so will get elected by the people, but they still have to be sworn in by the president. And so I'm asking, who is it that does that check on the ambassadors and the diplomatic appointments? Who's doing the check on that? Who's signing off in the end?
The president has no jurisdiction in that.
Dr. Duke, you know what people ain't ready for? People not ready for the serious discussion of what should we do. Are we just going to talk about the problems year after year? From Capildio, it was happening. With Dr. Eric Williams, it was happening. We change governments all the time, but racism is still there. Are we going to respect God bless our nation of many varied races? This is where
I think part of the issue is
I see a simple solution. My solution.
Here's Dr. Lashley. Yes, go ahead.
You know, we can talk a lot about what we will do, and that we should do that. But I see two solutions, and I think someone has made a statement. We have to pass laws that correct the problem. Having passed laws, we have to introduce educational structures. Two things.
Yes.
You can do anything you want to. You can talk all you want. If you don't have a law that holds that person responsible, they're going to do anything they want.
When you say law, Dr. Lashley, you be making it a law that no one call the Indians coolie. Should we make a law that no Indian should call a nigger, call that man nigger?
In other words, the law will be one of discrimination.
What kind of law?
I can file a lawsuit against you if by your attitude and behavior you're putting down my nation. I mean, you have to find your laws in such a way that people can't do certain things. Other than that, they're going to continue to do them with impunity. I can think of countries that have laws. I mean, it's not going to get to names, but for example, if you discriminate against me in the United States and you call me a name and you act out certain things, I might be able to sue you.
That's right.
So we have to get to that point.
In Trinidad with such a year coming up. This is my second show on race. An Indian here tonight. My other show, which Dr. Duke may not approve of, is to talk about race ever again.
Well, I don't like the race shows. I'll be honest. I don't like them because I told you I don't like the race shows because one, I don't think people from Trinidad and Tobago are prepared to talk about race. So let me have my minute here, Coco. So just to explain, right? So yes, you and I always have a lot of behind the scenes arguments because I personally don't think as a nation they're anywhere close to being prepared to talk about race because race has been so weaponized. It fuels so many emotions that nothing meaningful happens except finger pointing, right? Because You have two groups which in other parts of the world are both disenfranchised groups. And in fact, pretty much every group that comprises Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the major groups actually came from parts of the world. Even you look at who we call our 1%ers, many of them fled persecution. That's why they came to Trinidad and Tobago in two waves, right? Because they were fleeing persecution. What?
Who fled India because they used to be killed? Can you
explain? There was. We'll do a different show because I do think more people need to know their history and know where the people came from instead of constantly feeling like one is stealing from the other, one is less educated than the other, one is less competent than the other. None of that is true. And the truth is, until it comes from the top, where it's not just performative. We have the song is a beautiful song. God bless our nation of many varied races. But the truth is, has anybody actually sat people down and said, okay, now let's break down this song? Where are we now? Are we living up to the ideals of the song? We're not. If we ask, what does the flag mean, right? If you actually sit down and look at the meaning of every color on the flag, there's a meaning ascribed to each color on the flag.
That's why I'm tonight.
Yeah, right. But it's not discussed. So yes, I have constantly told you I don't like the race shows. I think race shows always end up the way this one is ending up, which is you've got Mr. James in his defensive position because he feels like he hasn't been heard. We've got Dr. Lashley withdrawing from the screen.
I'm very much here listening.
Because it brings so much discomfort. If we did a show just talking about the history of Tobago and we joked about our families and reminiscing about how teachers were.
God didn't put me on this Facebook to keep those mediocrity, them simple-minded show. We have serious matters that is destroying our people. And
every election, it gets weaponized. It gets used.
It gets weaponized. And we're not speaking on it.
But a big part.
So then, Member Coco, why can't we propose legislation that we can begin somewhere? We're talking all the time. You have to get to the point in our country where
But I am just asking a simple question. Why haven't we ever seen an Indian in the Tobago House of Assembly?
House of Assembly? Why have they not appointed an Indian?
I don't know. Never.
Yes.
Not as councillors, not as senators, not running for seat.
Because people do not elect people that do not look like them. This is a simple law.
But how many Indians have run for office in Tobago? How many Indians have run for office?
Have they gotten anyone to? Must be one every powder, maybe.
Well, here's the thing, right? So again, speaking to what I spoke to before and what Dr. Lashley just spoke to, if you're really intentional about equity, you don't just say they don't show up or run, right? In fact, that's an excuse that people who are guilty of inequity have said, right? So for example, you ask a male CEO, how come you don't have more women in leadership? Women don't apply for the jobs, but that's not good enough, right? How come you don't have enough black people in blah, blah? They don't apply or they're not qualified. That's not good enough. At some point, if you're intent on changing something, you actually have to say, okay, now we're in the next cabinet, we're going to make the
Dr. Duke,
who slams the hammer. Yeah.
The first part of tonight's promotion, can you please read it?
This?
Yes.
Tonight's show is an exploration and discussion of race relations.
No. The one that about this.
Oh, you mean the actual show promotion?
Yes, can you read the first part of it?
Okay, 1 second here. But again, I really think here's the thing, right? This is not a question of any one person here. This is really what happens when race comes up in conversation.
Can you read the first part of that promotion?
Yeah, hold on. I'm bringing it up here. Give me a second. But really, I think,
Can we read it? Don't say anything else until you read it.
Well, I'm finding it, Coco, but I'm speaking so we don't have awkward silences on the screen.
No, it's not awkward. We're finding it. That's just like our song. Mama Coco, I love everybody, but we get and stick to discipline and points.
So the promo was a famous novelist, poet, and activist, James Baldwin, once said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." Right?
That's it.
Okay.
Everybody stand up first of the week. We have to get ready to face stuff. We have to get ready to ask some Indians. We want a representation to show the society in which we live. We are about to bring change to Trinidad and Tobago. Sat Maharaj spent all his years and everybody just evading the point. It's a serious matter.
So, Madam Coco, if I can interject, I mean, you're talking about the Tobago House of Assembly.
Yes.
Why doesn't the Assembly pass laws that will allow greater diversity in people that are appointed? Pass a law that says that part of your assembly must have a certain percentage of diversity.
Yes.
If you don't do that, it will not easily happen.
All
That's
right.
the first step I would make. Pass a law. Let's get a law before the Tobago House of Assembly within the next 6 months.
So here's the thing, right? As Mr. James will say, Dr. Lashley, is those laws actually have to come from Trinidad for the assembly. But it's correct. It's intentional. For example, at this point, the breakdown of the government should not only just look at ethnicity, it should look at gender, it should look at, it's not just this and that vote, it should look at different backgrounds in the local government, similar thing. But that's when suddenly people are going to say that they're not having enough autonomy. But the truth is
where, and because of that, we do not have growth in our politics.
Right, because that's what I was going to say. The truth is, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and it's not actually getting you to better, then you do have to at some point become intentional, right? And certainly Melville wrote here, the movement that is happening in the US is exactly where groups are holding the US to certain inalienable rights, which is true, right? People are finally saying, okay, we're not just going to wait for you to give us equity. We're going to tell you what equity looks like for us, and we're going to hold you responsible.
Now the Senate here in America, look how many women taking over because people choose it, tell themselves this is time for us to get up and do something.
But I think one of the things that happens, unfortunately, in Trinidad and Tobago politics is, in so much as people don't like talking about race becomes inextricably tied in to the debates when the elections come up. And so people start losing sight and stop having conversations about the bigger equity issues because it goes right back to race, right? So they forget the equity issues and it's back about just this race, that race. Did you hear what so-and-so said? So-and-so said this about so-and-so.
Oh, real. Somebody called. This is not part of politics.
So we have Avanel. We're at 2 hours and 10 minutes in addition, Coco. Avanel, go ahead.
So I think one of the biggest problems within our community is the fact that we try so hard not to.
But James, you're looking so. This is not a look for the show. I'm telling you, God, look. Your hand by your face, your hand by your mouth.
I have to think. So this is my pen. Look.
You see the message that you're throwing back to the audience. I don't like. That's not you. You're a power man. Don't. No, don't.
Watch me. If I come across your power, I'll break up your show. I don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, look, Dr. Duke.
Listen to me.
Listen to me, brother.
You see what I mean? If I come across your power, watch me. If I come across your power.
A woman of sight, scenes, and songs.
Right.
Can we get your closing statements? Thank you.
Right. So life is about self-representation. So that in the pursuit of politics, one seeks the entire body politic, the history, the culture seeks to represent itself. And let me say too that Tobago is in freedom in a mode where it is still looking to overcome, to pass, not to be free. So some of the concerns you have at this stage, you may not see.
But you have so much to give and to offer. Why aren't you more in politics in order to bring the change that we need? You can't stay back and just go on a talk show for 20 years and not doing something more to really bring the knowledge that you have to the people and the change that Tobago want. You have it in you. Why are you on the back bench still? Why are you just...
I have been doing the education.
Where? To whom? Now people knowing about you.
No.
Yes, a lot of people just hearing you for the first time.
That because I would have paused. But listen to me. This entire movement that you see taking place in Tobago, the conversation, this whole conversation, not just in Tobago, but in Tobago and Trinidad, till Prime Minister Manina jumped in, and he started from an official level. And
I'm talking about you right now. Stop saying what you think you did.
I'm saying you have to allow people to represent themselves. Allow me to represent myself.
But you don't just represent yourself on talk shows.
No.
You in politics.
I'm talking about my answer to you. I have to represent myself in the way I answer you. And I'm saying to you, some people feel as though I should have been in the cotton trust. When the time is right, I will be there, God willing, when the time is right. But I'm saying to you, the conversation that is taking place that you see resulted in bills going to the parliament and all of that, it was started right here. And when the time is right for God to use me somewhere else, if He will have me, I will be there.
So you're waiting on time.
Waiting on whom?
Can't wait on time, man.
Closing statement from me. I have 3 concepts in the closing statement. Step 1, the people talk, discuss. Step 2, laws are formed through some means. Step 3, such laws are implemented across the country. If those 3 things are not done, you'll not get the change. And the question therefore is how to get the laws made so that we can have the changes across the wide spectrum. Discussion, legal action, implementation.
Okay.
So I love everything that you said concerning the laws and stuff like that. That's awesome. And can we all give Dr. Lashley a round of applause for his contributions tonight? And I pray that most of it get implemented and we can get the change that we need. We just can't talk racism. We have to act. We have to perform. We have to show. We have to get the law. We have to get people to understand that it is derogatory to use words against people, calling somebody Douglas, calling somebody Coolie, calling somebody nigger, calling somebody 1%. These things aren't good.
Can I say one more thing, Coco, very quickly? Years ago, when I was president of the school in Trinidad,
yes,
I went to cabinet.
Yes,
and we got cabinet to pass a law that allowed private universities and schools like University of Southern Caribbean to operate at a certain level. That was a cabinet action. I went to cabinet, sat with each of them over time, and the law was passed. It's in the Gazette. That's what I'm talking about.
That's right. That's what I'm talking. You see how that she throw up here? That's what I'm talking.
Mic drop.
In fact, the 1% terminology came from a representative of the 1% on a show in America.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of man that you are, Brother James, you keep going back on what one person say or do. That doesn't matter. It is not a good term. It is setting up a certain race of people to be robbed or to be killed or to be assassinated with classism. Not because they're living in a certain place. We live where we want to live and we live where we are safe. No.